So about 30 years ago, I had an idea for a form-setting hammer, but it never crossed my mind that it would ever be something that I could patent or that I ever would secure a patent. But I have. This is now actually a patented hammer, if you can imagine that. So let's talk about the process of bringing the good ideas that we have as blue-collar guys, because we do have good ideas, what it would take and who you might talk to if you wanted to actually bring it to the point where you got a patent on the thing. Now, a lot of you who have good ideas probably will just never pursue it because you're so busy making a living. I can relate to that. That's why it took me 22 or 25 years to take the first steps towards bringing this idea into reality. And a lot of you have. I mean, a lot of you have, and then you run into the challenges of what do I do once I've kind of got a 3D model of it? And it's complicated. But if I can do it with something as elemental as a hammer, probably you can do it with something that maybe has a greater new province, right? A greater cachet of new and innovative. But the thing that helped me to step across the divide from I think that would work to let's start making it work was to begin to make it tactile. You know, I mean, everything, as ideas, things kind of exist spiritually, if you will, before they exist temporally. And as soon as I took a piece of oak and ground it out on one of my 2x72 grinders, this thing began to take on a life. And then I remembered that I had met Brent Bailey at a Northwest Blacksmith Association conference, because I'm a blacksmith also, and so I thought about forging these things, but I haven't really become good at making hammers. And so I got Brent's number, and I called Brent and I said, hey, would you be interested in making me a hammer? Sure, okay. And so I sent him a pattern, just like this. And then, it took him a while. I mean, he's a busy guy. This thing came in the mail. I mean, there you are, right? So here's the first form setter on the planet. And all of a sudden, the momentum was happening. All of a sudden, this thing was in motion. So one of the things you ought to think about if you have a bright idea is figure out some way to stop thinking about it and do it a little bit, because there is something about the doing that tends to more doing, right? I mean, a body in motion tends to remain in motion. So in the path to getting these things made 100 at a time, there had to be a moment where it was rendered and it was communicated to somebody who could do it, and the first one showed up. Now the rest of the story there is that Brent's at a different time in his life, and it didn't appeal to him to get stuck making these things by the crate, by the pallet full. And so that didn't work out, but I was able to get in touch with a young, hungry Superman. Andrew Larson's a young Superman, and I haven't discovered or can't even imagine yet what kryptonite would be for Andrew unless it is a little too much OCD. Sorry, Andrew, I'm so thankful for your OCD. These are perfect. But in the journey to making an idea real, you need to begin to make it partially real, and then you've got to get pointed to somebody that can work you through the legal minutia of the patent process. And it is minutia. Now here's the thing. Applying for a patent costs some money. Even with Don Ersler. And Don he's effective and he's not overpriced and he's honest, and so he was the right guy. But before I actually engaged with the patent process, I had to get some hammers made. And before I got the hammers made, I had to make sure they were not only worthwhile in my imagination, because we are so proud of the things we think of, whether or not anybody else values them. So I sent Andrew a prototype, the pattern, and he started sending me prototypes. And I think it took 5 hammers before it was really the right one. But once it was getting close to being the right one, I thought, okay, who can test this for me? Dustin Furch and Brian Reynolds. You've got to get your idea into the hands of somebody who can be more objective than we can be, because our kids are the smartest, and our cars are the fastest, and our buildings are the most elegant, right? I mean, that's a human weakness, that we think more of our own stuff than anybody else does. So you've got to get your idea into the hands of somebody who can give you an objective evaluation about whether or not it's time to take the next costly step. Okay, so you're ready to think about pursuing a patent for real. You're ready to get out your wallet if you have to. But before you do that, go to freepatentsonline.com. Don Ersler gave me that link. I mean, that's a heads-up transparent patent attorney who will give you that. Go there. It's helpful. It will show you how much you can do on your own and maybe help you understand whether you should try it on your own. I decided that with the pricing paradigm that Don was giving me, I was going to let him carry that ball because, frankly, I've got plenty on my plate. One of the first things that you have to do after an initial patent search gives you the idea of whether or not you're the first to the party. There has to be a drawing made. Patent drawings are very specific in how they need to appear. Almost all the time now, they're done on AutoCAD. I don't do AutoCAD. I had a friend of mine do it in SketchUp. As it turned out, I sent it to Don and he said, well, that's not quite right, but I can use this drawing to get an accurate set of dimensions to my patent drawing draftsman dude who knows how to do it in exactly the way the patent office wants to see it. Turns out I couldn't waste my time in, doing it on a napkin, because if it's not done in a certain way, they just kick it out. So be very careful about the drawing. Then you have to be able to generate a description, the application and what it does and what the main purpose of your invention is. And you have to be careful in the word choice, because this is part of what will help the people examining your application decide if it is in fact unique. There's the drawing, there's the description. These are important. So after you've done your search or had your patent attorney do your search, I think Don charged me $675. I was so glad to be able to have somebody who knows how to do it, that I didn't even blink. It seemed reasonable. And once you've done your search, you can fill out your application. Once you've filled out the application and submitted it, you can put that glorious little stamp, patent pending, on your work. That is the beginning of insurance, if you will, against having it stolen. But it's weak insurance because, there are people whose entire model is to steal other people's ideas. But at least you will kind of fend off the people who are not cannibals, right? Patent pending looks good, and I was delighted when I had the stamp made by Buckeye Engraving and sent to Andrew Larson, and he began to put patent pending on the top of these hammers. So at the application point, you're going to decide whether you're pursuing a design patent or a utility patent. Now, I can't give you a coherent sort of description of the difference, except design is more global and utility is more about how this particular tool is used, I think. Something like that. And it's less expensive on the application process. It's like a couple grand. But a utility patent application ranges, I think, from in the $3,500 range up to $5,000 or $6,000, I think. Now, I don't know why, but I didn't have to know why. I had just decided, Don advised me, that a utility patent was going to be much easier to get and more useful for a hammer than a design patent would be. So I took his advice. It was good advice, and we moved forward. So you may be wondering, I know I was wondering, am I going to have to mail the patent office a hammer? And the answer to that is no, I did not mail them a hammer. I sent the drawing and the description, and the drawing had dimensions and arc length. It had the drawing, an accurate drawing of what this hammer's like and what it's for. And I did not have to mail them a hammer. Easy. So let me circle back to the drawing piece. The drawings have to be done in exactly the way that the patent office wants them done, not necessarily even in exactly the way that you would make the drawing to send to the machine shop to fabricate the piece. It is very specific, they don't want too much, they don't want too little, they want exactly the information they want in exactly the perspective and from the angles. And so if you're going to tackle the drawings yourself, be ready either to talk to somebody who really knows how or to slow up your application. Now, don't stress over this drawing and how you're going to get it done. A good patent attorney is going to have someone on speed dial that he can contact and email or fax or text the rough drawing and the photographs and the information you have to the person that can draw it. Now, obviously, there would be a wide range of possible costs associated with this. And for me, it was another cost that I was surprised at how affordable it was. I think it was $350. I'm not quite sure, but I think it was around $300 to have the drawing made. That was a bargain. Now, just because you have applied doesn't mean that the next time you hear from them, it's going to be an approval or a rejection. It takes about a year, I think, for them to even examine, that is, pull out of the stack and have a look at your application process. If it's a design patent, if it's a utility patent, it can take like up to 3 times that long. And I don't know why. I don't understand that. Don will be able to explain that to you, but some time is going to go by. And of course, just like with a passport, you can pay extra money to expedite the process. There was also, I think in my case, in fact, I'm sure in my case, the timeline was expedited because I was 65. So I guess they recognize that 65-year-olds don't have an extra 2 or 3 or 4 years to wait for a patent. I mean, that's pretty human for a bureaucracy, isn't it? So, but the time starts passing and everybody's antsy and the opportunity for somebody to get ahead of you exists. So you have to balance all these things before you decide how hard you want to pursue a rapid response. So if you've got a bright idea, and it really is a bright idea, and your friends are encouraging you, you can do this yourself. I mean, I've got a friend, David Brockett, who's a very tightly organized guy, and he's got 2 patents. Maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're already an attorney, or maybe you're just OCD, and you're not afraid of bureaucracies and applications. Well, then do it. Do it. Get it rendered in 3D somehow and do it. But if you're not that guy, and I'm not that guy, we've got Don Ersler on a podcast. We've got a podcast. Did you know that? Go to your podcast app and check out Essential Craftsman. Go to, on YouTube, we've got another channel, EC2, where you can see and hear the podcast and hear Don go way into the weeds on some of the things to watch out for and be careful of if you want this to happen. As far as the patenting process, you had pointed me towards some online help with some questions that I had, which was impressive because I didn't anticipate that a patent attorney would sort of tip his mitt and point a prospective client to a site that could help, and it impressed me.
I try to help my clients as any way I can.
Yeah, and I really like the way this is wound up because I never expected to have a patent. I never expected to have one on something as elemental as a hammer. Turns out, though, that EssentialCraftsman.com is the only place in the world that you can go to get one of these form setters. And if you're a form setter, if you're a concrete guy, or if you've got a garden, or if you ever set up a tent, or if you ever do anything where you might need to pound something in and dig something out, buddy, I've got the tool for you. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.